Recycling programs. They don't need to be scary. Just like at your house, once a year, you can imagine waste haulers going through, and now they're forced with collecting hundreds, if not thousands, of pumpkins. This is a one-off issue, and it's very similar to our own businesses where sometimes you get a surge in materials. Very similar to the Christmas holiday season where there's a lot of materials. This doesn't have to be a scary situation. It just requires proper planning. Sure, you're recycling at your office. You're doing the basics. You're collecting paper, perhaps even beverage containers. And then someone approaches you and says, I want you to collect electronic waste, compost, or some other material. And your first thought is, uh-oh, you get scared. You frightened about the change that's coming because you simply don't understand what's involved with this change. And now you have to go forth and find out answers. To do something new, and for all of us, no matter what it is, it can be tremendously scary to do the right thing and finding out how to do that right thing. Recycling in a business requires a lot of planning, a lot of thinking ahead of time, so it doesn't end up being a failure, which is probably the scariest thing of all if you have to report that your program simply didn't work. If you fail to plan, then you can plan to fail. And this holds true in not only recycling, but everything else that we do in our lives. There are many points to a recycling program that need to be addressed, and let's face it, some of these issues are scarier than others. And a great example of this is if you are recycling the traditional materials, but now you have to start collecting hazardous waste. If you don't address it properly, that can end up, pretty scary situation. Another area is planning the volume that you look to collect. If you don't plan for that, it can be an extremely large amount, unsightly, resulting in people going, what's going on here? That's just not pleasant to look at. An issue that keeps coming up, and although it's part of our lives, is the vermin. It could be rats, it could be raccoons, it could be squirrels, it could be flying insects. To some people, this is really scary. And if you've been in New York City seeing all the garbage piled up, and literally it's like the bags are alive with all the rats in there, that is something that is not only distasteful, but very scary. And these are issues that we need to learn how to address. And an example of this is if you approach a recycling center, and let's say there's spilled sodas or pops or coffee, the hornets attract there for the sugar. And all of a sudden, do you really want to approach a bin where there's all these hornets, that fear of being stung? Pretty scary to some people, and I've seen it happen in real situations. There's always a solution, and some people believe by putting a flap on that container, it's going to make the problem go away. And in many cases it will. But on the flip side, there's even scarier situation that I've witnessed. So if you have a flap and an animal gets in there and can't get out. I witnessed this years ago. A custodial member went to empty the bin on a Monday morning only to find out a very large raccoon was in there and jumped out. So if that isn't a scary way to start your Monday morning, I don't know what is. So think about the whole process of purchasing equipment and what is going to make it more user-friendly and less scary to everybody involved. In addition to solving one problem of putting a flap on a container, there's a bigger issue when you're purchasing outdoor containers. And this is a situation that I've seen that is probably the scariest one of them all. Sometimes you're recommended to purchase, the concrete containers, the big 600-800 pound ones that are out there, so nobody's going to steal them. And I've seen cases where you can order them in round or in square. To be less scary, I would say always order them in square, because I was at one university one time where a couple of people thought it'd be a fun joke just to roll it over and roll it down a hill. So if you can imagine a 600-pound concrete cylinder coming at you, that's probably pretty scary. And it did end up hitting a vehicle, which created a mess. And in rare cases, we've seen organizations where they attach the bins to the wall. And one of the things I can tell you is with kids, kids like to explore and they like to touch and climb. And I have seen firsthand examples where kids will climb on units attached to the wall, only to end up having the units pull away from the wall and landing on them. Nobody wants to be involved in that scenario. But I think another thing is sometimes kids will recycle a glass bottle, for example, and they want to look down that bowl and see where it's going, only to see it smash and glass come back in their eyes. And these are the little things you think about and try and avoid and help you make a successful program that at the end of the day is a lot less scary to deal with and avoid the unexpected situations that life throws at us. Recycling programs is like prepping for Halloween. You have to have a plan. And I know as a kid we had a map where we were going. We'd have our flashlights, we'd have our reflective stuff so you could be safe, and we'd also make sure we have the bags. Nothing scarier out there than kids having a bag and it's full and they can't collect anymore. Just think about the look on a kid's face. So it really comes down to planning out all of the details and asking the what ifs, because recycling should be a really good thing and not something that everyone's scared or fearful of dealing with. I'm Bruce Buchan, encouraging you to never waste a moment, especially when it comes to planning your recycling program, so everybody can enjoy it, buy in, and not become a really scary experience.